Hello guys, welcome to DrNightStare. I know you guys come here to relax and take a nap. So before we go, please hit like and subscribe. By the way, also tell me what time and where you guys listening from. Alright then. Of all the evenings for a dark spirit to call, it chose one of quietude. No raging tempests, no violent cracks of lightning and thunder. The night was still, cloudless, the stars obscured by the distant glow of the metropolis. I was on the late watch in the secluded meditation chamber of the Benedictine Abbey. It was the 11th hour, and no one had yet sought my counsel. I was dozing in my chair when the partition to the other side of the chamber was softly drawn open. Someone stepped in and took a seat. I had heard no one enter the abbey. The approach of a potential seeker was usually heralded by the echo of footsteps on the stone floor leading to the wooden cubicle. This one had arrived so silently that until the moment they opened the door, I had believed myself utterly alone. Still caught in a half-dream, I blinked several times to awaken and turned to view the visitor through the grate. I could not discern their features through the wooden screen, and the deep shadow filling their compartment concealed most finer details. But I could tell they were male and dressed with considerable expense. The individual wore a suit that appeared exquisite, and from the subtle clinking sound his hands made, I knew they were adorned with rings. They glinted, casting strange, warped rays of light on the ceiling that brought to mind ancient evils stirring in primeval mire. "Good evening, Sister Agnes." That voice, smooth as finely polished obsidian, like the glint off a freshly sharpened blade, with the resonant chime of a perfectly struck bell, pure, almost celestial in origin. It rolled pleasingly on my ears, and I felt an inexplicable ease settle over me. Forgive me, for I have transgressed. It has been ages uncounted since my last confession. Despite the smoothness of his voice, his words struck an uncertain chord within me. "That is an unusual beginning, my son." The man chuckled. "Allow me to explain, sister. I am Lucian. I have ministered to an expansive and varied assembly of both saintly and sinful souls. This was not the first time I had been in the chamber and heard the person on the other side claim to be the Prince of Darkness. Most times, such delusions did not interfere with the process. I treated them as any other, spoke to them of their wrongdoings, and tried to offer a modicum of hope that they would find wholeness, that one day they would be free of their fevered minds. This man was different. It must have been the growing dread I felt at his arrival, but I looked at him more closely through the divider. His eyes found mine, and I saw them clearly, even though his face remained shrouded in gloom. Brown irises, so dark they were almost black. As I searched, I noted he bore none of the popular hallmarks of the adversary: no horns, cloven hooves, or the smell of sulfur. This man carried a scent of something akin to burnt cedar and an almost unholy cleanliness, and the vestments of a seasoned magnate. But in my heart, the truth of the matter grew like a weed. I could not deny it. I was convinced by the palpable darkness the man had brought and the unease that prickled in the corners of my mind. It was the same primeval instinct that tells animals they are in the presence of a predator. He was not lying, my confessor. As sure as I would know the incarnate sun if he walked through my door, I knew this being to be the devil himself. My mouth went dry, my mind went silent, and the only words I could utter were those which had been ingrained into me by habit. "Do you wish to confess?" Lucien laughed. It was a soft sound, 2 parts pain and 1 part joyless mirth. It filled the whole space, but made everything feel hollow. When he spoke again, I noticed his voice slurred slightly, like one inebriated. "I suppose I have. It sounds odd even to me. I didn't know that I would come here until my feet took the path." I waited. My tongue had frozen to the roof of my mouth. I feared for my immortal soul if I were to say the wrong thing to Satan. Lucien took my silence as an offered compliance. "I hope you will understand if I do not make the sign of the cross, considering present company." "Quite all right, my son." "Lucian is fine, sister." I swallowed. I reminded myself I was in a place consecrated to the Creator, that the devil held no power here, But still, I could not keep my knees from trembling beneath my habit. My heart thrummed within my chest with a frantic, desperate rhythm. "Very well, Lucian, what do you wish to confess?" Lucian went quiet. His head bowed in thought. I saw him gather his thoughts, and my fear left me enough so that the gesture struck me as odd. I had only seen such movement before in those truly contrite. I did not know the devil to be contemplative. Satan began to speak. "I confess, the infernal dominion is no longer mine." "Do you mean in that it has been saved through the Son?" Even as I spoke, I felt foolish. Lucian laughed again. "I almost wish that were the case. Does that speak to how dire the situation is? But I suppose you already knew that. I am here after all." I waited, but the pause continued. "How then is the infernal dominion no longer yours?" Lucian did not answer for a moment. I heard him sigh, and heard the clink of gold as he wrung his hands together in his lap. "What do you know of my history, sister? You fell from paradise. You rebelled against the Creator. You seek to undermine his divine tapestry. You studied your own book. Well done. But it is correct in that regard. Yes, I rebelled against the Creator, and yes, I was cast down because of it." Lucian took another moment. The initial fear of him was wearing off. As my mind began to work, I again questioned the strangeness of our meeting. I had expected something more like a confrontation with raw, consuming malice. Instead, it was like seeing a weary, ancient adversary. Lucian spoke again. "Yes, I confess, I wish to take control of the Creator's kingdom. I confess to the sin of ambition, if such a sin even exists. I believed I could do better, so wasn't I morally obligated to see it through. Even when I was cast down, I still gathered legions to my side. What was that you people said all those ages ago? That the Creator incarnate would come down and allow himself a humiliating sacrifice. A fool's bet, I said. I had met the Creator. He would not do it. He could not do it. He was soft. He could not even bring himself to destroy me, and I had done many things to deserve such a punishment. The Creator had limits. But he did do it. My own boldness surprised me. I saw Lucian turn to look at me. The unnerving idea came that not only could he see me in perfect detail behind the screen, but that he could see through my very skin and into the darkest desires of my soul. When he spoke, his voice was soft, and I felt that sense of danger return to me. Cold sweat broke out across my brow. Lucian's voice barely broke above a whisper. Yes, he did. For a moment, I held my breath, praying silently to the sun to preserve me. I felt no calming sense of peace, only the stillness of a death heaven. Lucian remained quiet as he continued. "I take no offense, sister. You are not the first to speak those words to me. The minute the sun rose from that tomb, I lost what control I had over my subjects. In their eyes, I was wrong, no longer to be trusted. Odd, considering they were the ones to give me the moniker, Master of Deception. Lord Mammon was the first to sever his allegiance. He led the most away. That made everyone bolder, and soon the dark sovereign Lilith departed. Then there was Baal with his sycophantic cultists that seemed to serve everyone and anyone just for some small notoriety. He had never gotten over the humiliation at Mount Carmel, felt like he needed to prove himself. They all turned upon one another. The infernal dominion was awash in the ichor of its own denizens for almost a century. And is this why you have come to me?" I shivered as I felt Lucian's gaze upon me once more. "Patience, sister. Isn't that what you preach?" It was silent for a long time. I forced myself to remain quiet. I had begun to sweat, even though my cubicle felt icy cold. I was left with nothing. None of my subjects remained loyal. I was watching the battle for the infernal dominion as a spectator. No one rallied to my banner. No one remained loyal to the one they had elected as Lord. Somehow, among my own people, I had fallen a second time. It was inexcusable. But I had nowhere left to turn, no manner of recompense. He stopped speaking again. But this time, I felt something more than just dread. A great turning point suspended above us. I do not profess the gift of divine foresight. The feeling inside of me was not so divine. I felt some primal shrieking terror urge me to halt. Some unevolved part of myself begging for him to stop, to halt the confession and not to hear any more. I knew that if I continued to listen, I risked crossing the boundary of sanity and plunging into the abyss of madness. I held my soul in one hand, haggling with infinity for the price of a devil's story. In my foolishness, I disregarded it all. I stayed silent and ushered in my own damnation. Sister, Lucien's voice was soft again. Do you know there are depths deeper than the infernal dominion, darknesses where even I have not ventured? The arrogance of the enlightened is that he thinks he has gone further than all else. I share his shame. In my search for the power to crush the rebellions of the infernal dominion, I stumbled on that which I should not have even considered. Things the Creator himself would not challenge. Things that were meant to remain untouched. Through the screen, I saw Lucien look down to his hands, almost as a child confronted with their own misdeeds. They were rumors at first, odd mentions, stories forgotten. But I searched them, and as I investigated, those rumors grew into theories, and then into realities. Beneath the very foundations of existence was might untapped. I was certain of it. With that certainty, I went into the dark and journeyed through that forgotten gloom for a century. Lucien turned to look at me again. In the shadow, I saw his eyes clearly, as I had before. In them, I saw a nascent madness, yes, but deeper, I saw a profound, chilling terror. I found things, entities that existed before the Creator himself, creatures whose names I would not utter even in the full light of day, beings twisted by a malice so absolute, a primal agony that superseded all semblance of reason, replacing it with raw, unfathomable power. They understood nothing but the desire to pull every organized molecule and subparticle into a storm of devastation. Lucien's voice hitched. He swallowed. In the early days, I would have never, but I was desperate. I became aware of a deepening void around me, a palpable absence that grew stronger in Lucien's silence. In the chamber, I felt the phantom touch of countless unseen gazes upon me, and I wished to hide. But I could not. I knew I could not. I had stepped over the threshold, and by acknowledging these beings, I had opened a conduit to their awareness. Lucien continued. I tried to tell them, my old subjects. I warned them of what would happen if they persisted in their petty war. I was the true master of the infernal dominion. I had built this place up from rubble, in the very defiance of the Creator himself, and still they dismissed me. When I told them of the great evil I had at my fingertips, they did not believe me. They thought my mind broken. Imagine that. In Lucien's next pause, I hazarded a moment to speak. I could no longer exist in silence without fearing my own annihilation to beings unseen. What did you do? Lucien looked at his hands again, so childlike. I awakened them. Unbidden to my mind leapt images of carnage. I do not know if it was a vision, but I saw the infernal dominion crumbling to dust. I felt that void again, a twisting and roiling mass that made my mind race. I saw it grow to swallow Lucien's kingdom, and felt its insatiable hunger reverberate through my very being. My spirit screamed, rent by the sheer chaos and encroaching oblivion. I knew if I persisted in this state for long, I would lose my mind. Then all in a moment, I was snapping back to the hushed quiet of the chamber. So swallowed up in what I had seen, I almost missed Lucien's next words, and the slight tremble that they contained. All I desired was the Creator's throne. I knew I could be better. I could do better. Those beings now holding sway over the infernal dominion, over the very threads of human and divine fate, they are not like you or I. They desire neither control nor salvation. To them, both paradise and the underworld are mere flotsam on the cosmic tide. I heard the clink of gold again, and I assumed Lucien was playing with his rings. I confess, the infernal dominion is no longer mine, and soon the mortal sphere will no longer be the Creator's domain. Nothing will. I stared at Lucien through the screen. He looked at me, and in his veiled countenance, I saw the true desolation of his condemned existence. What I had thought was a terrible joke, a trick, was in fact the most sincere form of remorse from the Prince of the Abyss. A transgression so profound even he sought absolution. Lucian looked at me again, and I could tell we both felt empty. For what it's worth, I apologize, sister. I had hoped to rule this world. Now I must watch it crumble. It will descend into ash and decay. The very portals of paradise will corrode and fracture. Angelic forms will lie strewn and decaying. The demons already lie in the dust. A day, a week, a millennium, who knows when what I awoke will ascend. But mark my words, it will ascend. And I will be sole witness to the ending of the Creator, a solitary atom in the chaos of uncreation. That is my eternal burden, and I shall carry it. Lucian paused, then continued. This is all I can remember, sister. I am sorry for this, my greatest sin. For a moment, I was so swallowed up in hopelessness that I forgot to offer penance. But what penance could I offer? When I looked through the grate again, Lucian had left. I stumbled out and tried to follow him, but found no trace, no evidence he had come and conversed with me, that he had confessed to the imminent end of everything. I do not know if I crossed the threshold of insanity that night or the night following. After Lucian's confession, I returned to my cell and slept through the day and into the next night. In my sleep, I had a dream. I traversed an endless gloom. Colossal entities stirred nearby, things with sinuous forms and countless appendages, small perverse things with claws that bit and tore, creatures with terrible wings, bodies made up of whirling geometries that twisted the very fabric of logic. They were distinct yet interconnected, forming a single, sweeping entity. Before me appeared a great seat carved from the void itself. I set myself thereupon, and was engulfed by a maelstrom of the known and the utterly unfathomable. I felt the seat dissolve beneath me, and fractures erupted across my own being. My lifeblood spilled, vaporized by the searing presence of those terrible entities that then brought the entire scene to a sudden annihilation. And once there was nothing left to tear, rip, or destroy, they left. Only the void remained. In that frigid vacuum I endured 1,000 ages. Then I awoke. I am no prophet. I do not pretend to know if such things are portents to come. I know a part of me has fractured, but the fallen one promised the ascent of those below. I await that dawn with a terror that chills my very soul, the day the Prince of the Abyss, with fear in his ancient eyes, foretold. Principal Anya Thorne's study felt like a cage, despite its sprawling size. I sat rigidly, my gaze fixed on my lap, trying to process the surreal nightmare my life at Blackwood Academy had become. 2 silent guards loomed behind me, their presence a suffocating weight. Every subtle shift in my posture made them twitch, their eyes snapping to attention. I had arrived here seeking self-discovery, only to stumble into a student body consumed by a fanatical adherence to the zodiac. My eyes drifted to a faded astrology chart on the wall, where the Academy's most reviled sign had been violently scribbled out with permanent marker. Principal Thorne's study was an astrologer's paradise, cluttered and cozy in a disheveled way. Books and papers formed precarious towers, forgotten coffee mugs dotted surfaces, and star maps, stained with coffee rings, covered her laptop. Principal Thorne herself, a woman my mother's age, was a perpetually scowling shadow in the room. A projector cast shimmering constellations across the walls, bathing her face in an otherworldly light. I found myself lazily tracing Orion's path when her sharp voice sliced through my distraction. Miss Vance. I flinched, snapping to attention, my cheeks burning. Orion's bright stars skimmed across her face, momentarily mesmerizing me with their ethereal beauty. It was a mistake, I finally managed, the words catching in my throat. It wasn't a mistake, not really, but admitting the truth felt impossible. This academy, with its draconian zodiac rules, harbored a particular, inexplicable hatred for one sign. My gaze returned to the vandalized chart. The crossed-out symbol was unmistakable, Gemini. Growing up, I'd heard complaints about Pisces for being fish or Cancer for being crabs. But Gemini? The sign of the twins, ruling the vibrant summer months, its constellation a personal favorite. Yet here, it was an anathema. From my first days as a late admission, I'd witnessed the systematic mistreatment of Gemini students. I remembered a new boy, who seemed like a harmless class clown, introducing himself with a cheerful grin. During an icebreaker, or what I'd assumed was one, he'd shrugged. I think I'm a Gemini? Born on June 10th. A palpable chill descended. The girl beside him subtly scooted her laptop away. The rest of the class collectively exhaled, then turned, almost robotically, towards a shadowed corner of the room where 4 students hunched over their MacBooks. The professor's expression soured, his eyes darkening. "I think," he began, his voice strained, then seemed to collect himself. "You should go join your friends at the back." The Gemini boy looked baffled, a flicker of hurt in his eyes. The air crackled with unspoken judgment. I felt eyes on me too, the professor's wide and tense. He just shook his head. "I'm confused," the boy chuckled nervously, nearly jumping when a girl behind him kicked his bag. Is this some kind of joke? Now." The professor's voice was stiff, not even looking at him. "But it's just a star sign, right?" "I will not ask you again," the professor said, folding his arms. "Move to your designated seat, or you're out of my class." To my surprise, the boy complied, navigating the cringing students to join his assigned group in the back. I noticed then that the entire class had been segregated by their zodiac signs. Leos were at the front, flanked by Sagittarius and Libra. I initially believed it was an isolated eccentricity of that one class, but the obsession with the zodiac had infected the entire campus like a virulent disease. Grades and careers paled in comparison to astrological compatibility. Certain signs, like the Leos and Sagittarius, held faculty in their thrall, enjoying exclusive clubs and extra credit, while the rest of us were left to struggle. Geminis, however, were either mercilessly bullied or treated as if they carried a contagious affliction. It was 6th grade all over again, but with grown adults. In elementary school, I'd been proud of my Gemini sign, imagining a secret twin like Castor and Pollux. Seraphina Davis, a Pisces, had once called me a two-faced bitch. I'd retaliated by calling her an ugly fish. But this was college. This was supposed to be different. Over the past few days, the initial disgust for Geminis had warped into fear. Students now actively avoided them, a wary look contorting every face, a look I now saw reflected in Principal Thorne's eyes. She was scared of me. Despite her authoritative facade, her finger nervously tapped a coffee mug, her gaze darting to the clock. She was waiting for something, her posture rigid, eyebrows furrowed deeper with each passing minute. "A mistake," she repeated my words, her tone dripping with sarcasm. "Yes." I avoided her gaze, my clammy hands brushing against my jeans. What could I say? I hadn't wanted to associate myself with what I thought was a transient trend. But here I was, staring at an anonymous, crumpled letter in my fists, outing my true star sign. The crossed O's in the handwriting stood out. I had been masquerading as a Sagittarius, one of the coveted it signs. The letter felt like a physical blow. It screamed that I didn't belong, that because of a brainwashed hive mind, I was to be feared. "Who sent this?" I demanded, squeezing the paper. "Dearest Principal, I would like you to know of a traitor amongst you, a Sagittarius by the name of Vance, who is in fact a Gemini. I am so sorry for ruining your day. Anon." I didn't know whether to laugh or cry. Principal Thorne's glare was a laser beam fixed on my forehead. If looks could kill. "I don't know what to say," I choked out. She hummed. "You can start by explaining yourself." She wasn't kidding. "Miss Vance, I am horrified that you would disguise yourself as a Sagittarius." Her lip curled. "As one myself, I should have sensed that our energy was wrong, polluted with your presence. But I let my guard down. I slammed the letter onto her desk. This woman was utterly insane. "Who sent this?" I repeated, my voice sharper. "That is none of your concern," Principal Thorne said. "You lied, Miss Vance, about my zodiac sign." I sucked in a breath. "It's really not a big deal." Her eyes darkened. "As you will discover, Miss Vance, it is extremely important that we know where every Gemini is." Her gaze flicked to her MacBook. especially when certain measures have been put in place. Measures? I straightened. What kind of measures? Her lip curled. You are a late arrival. It is your fault for not arriving on time. You're kidding, I scoffed. Enough was enough. Students behaving like this was one thing, but grown adults? I leaned forward, testing her boundaries. She flinched. Was it a bad experience? She blinked. I don't understand. A bad experience you had, I repeated. With a Gemini. Weeks of repressed anger bubbled to the surface. Because that is all it is, what you're all unhealthily obsessed with. I spoke through gritted teeth. They're just stars. They don't mean anything to anyone, except children. Miss Vance, see? I traced the Gemini constellation mapped on her desk, poking each static light. It was ironic that it was there. I jabbed at Castor and Pollux, then Alhena. I gestured to Orion on the wall. Stars. They're just stars. Dead and dying planets, or if you're religious, your long-dead relatives. Whatever. I pointed at the map under her MacBook, and Principal Thorne flinched again, angling away from me. She leaned back as if I were contagious. One of the guards stepped forward, but she shook her head, maintaining a professional, albeit strained, smile. There is no need, Principal Thorne said sharply, and the guards retreated. Miss Vance is understandably upset. She cleared her throat. Please vacate your current residence room and move into the forsaken hall across campus, where we house Geminis without rooms. She stood before I could reply. I don't expect to see you in my study again. I grabbed my bag, rising. You're not expelling me? Her lip twitched. We do not suspend Gemini students, Ms. Vance. But what if I want to leave? Because of the measures in place. A warm, unsettling sensation coiled in my throat, but the guards were already politely ushering me out. Principal Thorne's words echoed in my mind until I was halfway across campus, breathless and regretting every defiant word. She had given me a warning and an order. Leave my current dorm immediately and move into the Forsaken Hall, a crumbling, large structure that used to be student housing. Bars on the windows, a broken door. No way was I staying there. Couch crashing with a friend sounded infinitely better. Lila, a Leo, always insisted she didn't care about star signs. Rich, coming from a Leo, considering she embodied the full Leo experience. I was planning to sneak into her room later that evening. We were cross-legged on the floor, eating takeout, when the announcement blared over the intercom. Starting from 8 p.m., please lock ALL Geminis in their rooms. It is upon us. Lila froze, her eyes widening. Until then, she had been unusually quiet, making me think she was just tired. She sent me a sleepy smile and said she was getting beer from the kitchen. What I didn't expect was for her to return wielding one of her mother's butcher knives. I recoiled, terrified by the look in her eyes. Her whole body trembled, fingers white around the handle. Her face was contorted by a feral fear I couldn't comprehend. Lila, I bit back a cry. Hey, it's me, it's Aurora. Get out. She sobbed, twisting towards the door. Please, I don't want to hurt you. She waved the knife wildly. I raised my arms, my heart hammering. You have 15 minutes, the voice on the intercom drawled. Lila's expression hardened. I repeat, please lock ALL Geminis inside their rooms immediately and find a safe place. This warning will expire at 5 a.m. 8 hours from now. A sudden bang outside sent my fight or flight instincts into overdrive. Doors slammed, footsteps pounded. My eyes were fixed on the blade in Lila's hand. They were serious. Principal Thorne had indeed turned an entire campus against one star sign. Lila's frightened eyes met mine. I lowered my arms. Wait, are you going to stab me? I took a slow step back. Because I was born in May? I couldn't help a bitter laugh. You told me you didn't care about the Zodiac. You said all of this was BS. So, why now? Another step, and she squeaked. Do you want to fit in, Lila? Are the other Leos making you do this? She didn't respond, and my anger flared. Lila didn't know why she was afraid of me. Her head had been filled with lies. I raised my arms in mock surrender. Why are you looking at me like that? Lila, I'm not going to hurt you. When have I ever? Tears stung my eyes. I could hear screaming outside, Geminis being attacked and locked up. I risked another step back, and her grip on the knife changed, ready to strike. You are brainwashed, I said slowly. Principal Thorne wants you to be scared. She's crazy, Lila. Delusional. She has some insane vendetta against Geminis, and she's punishing us. Lila choked out a cry. Last month, she spoke through sobs. One of you got into my room. She shook her head rapidly, squeezing her eyes shut. Just leave, she squeaked. I'm sorry, Aurora. I'll explain, I promise. But you need to find someplace else, and it can't be here. It can't be tonight. She smiled, but her lips were strained, eyes wide with terror. When I moved to reassure her, she jumped back like a deer. She was utterly terrified of me. Lock yourself up, my friend said softly, and I knew I had lost her. But don't hurt yourself. They can climb through the windows and sense light. They follow it. So make sure to turn them off and stay down. Her expression darkened. Can you promise me something? I found myself nodding dizzily. Lila squeezed her eyes shut. Don't look up. My gut twisted into knots. What? Her words struck a chord, but she was already dropping the knife and gently pushing me through the door. I was shoved into the hallway, my bags thrown at my face as alarms began to blare, red lights pulsing down the corridors. I saw shadows darting in and out of rooms, others being forcibly dragged inside, while retreating figures made for the elevators. A boy was violently pulled out by a girl and thrown to the ground. In that moment, I stopped seeing students, kids. I saw wild animals, crawling backward on their hands and knees, eyes darting for an escape. A girl ran into me, dropped to her knees, then catapulted into a sprint, only to be caught by 3 guys who dragged her away, kicking and screaming. I had no choice. It was 7:50 p.m. when I found myself standing before the Forsaken Hall, alarms still ringing in my ears. The dorm looked more like a decaying boarding house. The night felt eerily still, a half moon peeking through the clouds. Something was glued to the front door, a simple white sheet of paper. On it, scrawled in permanent marker, was "No" in bold letters. The crossed O was familiar. 5 minutes, the intercom screeched. In my panic, I knocked 3 times. Hello? I banged again. Hey, can someone let me in? My star sign tangled in my throat when a crash sounded behind me. I twisted to see a group of students dragging 2 bound and gagged figures, hauling them into a car trunk. My stomach lurched. I turned back to knock, but my fist met something warm. A shadow stood in the doorway, golden light bleeding around him. I could barely make out his face, just a mop of reddish curls. He tugged the paper off the door and held it out. The handwriting was unmistakable. No means no, he said, and moved to slam the door. I quickly wedged my heel in the way. He tried to shut it on my foot, and in my panic, I shoved it back at him. The guy sputtered, but didn't try again. I kept my guard up. You told Principal Thorne about me, I hissed. Did we go back to 6th grade? He snorted. You can talk. More screams echoed behind us. I resisted the urge to slip past him, but he shoved me back, quick as a whip. What? The shadow paused, then stepped into the light. I glimpsed narrowed eyes and freckles. I tried to push past, but he stood stubbornly in the way. His eyes were hidden by scuffed Ray-Bans. Ah, yes, the traitor, he said, as if he'd rehearsed this moment. Hiding in Sagittarius, thinking we wouldn't notice. He cocked his head. How's that working out for you? I heard laughter behind him. Looking closer, I noticed something metallic clamped around his wrist. Was he chained up? Traitor? I managed. He nodded, a grin spreading across his face. The secret Gemini, he said, making a huge show of blocking my way. You're actually famous around here. We turned your room into a relaxation lounge, so unfortunately. He drew out the A like he was auditioning for a villain. There's no room at the inn, dude. His lips curled into a spiteful smile. Behind me, another crash echoed. Ice shot down my spine. I couldn't bring myself to turn and witness more brutality. The guy stiffened, but if he was scared, he didn't show it. He had too much pride. He hiked his glasses up his nose, revealing eyes shadowed by an eerie glow spreading across his pupils. For a moment, I thought I saw hurt crumple his expression, but it was instantly replaced by a surprisingly convincing facade. His gaze followed mine to another student being mercilessly dragged across the parking lot. When I turned back to him, his expression had darkened. He slid his glasses back into place with emphasis. I swore this guy thought he was in a play. "Have fun locking yourself up," he said, saluting me with 2 fingers before stepping back. Another jingle, and he flinched. This time, I saw it clearly. A rusted chain wrapped around his ankle and right wrist. He noticed me staring, and his lips curled into a scowl. Jasper stepped behind the door, clearly embarrassed. "This is your 2-minute warning," the intercom blared, still loud even this far away. Hearing it, he gently kicked my foot out of the way, and I almost fell. I could hear voices as I shuffled back. I checked my phone, 7,580 p.m. Fuck. Wait, I managed to hiss. He stopped, letting out a sigh. "It wasn't hard to just accept your star sign," he grumbled. "The rest of this school are psychos, but we take care of our own." "It's a star sign," I gritted out. "Why are you going along with this?" His jaw clenched. "You should go," he hesitated. "The top floor is usually safe. Head to the upper sanctuary restroom and lock yourself up." "You're fucking insane." A part of me hoped he was just trying to scare me, that he'd drag me insane, that he dragged me inside at the last moment. But no, this kid was really abandoning me to the unknown. The guy shrugged. "Yeah," he shot me a grin. "Bye," he said, slamming the door a little too hard in my face. "Asshole," I yelled, kicking the door. "You shouldn't have sided with the Leos. You shouldn't have sided with the Leos." He rebutted from inside. "Why did you do that?" Another male voice hissed. "Because she's a traitor." A girl joined in. "Aren't you being a little too harsh?" Gee, nope. She can sit out there and rot. I left them to argue and made my way back onto campus. 7,059 p.m. Bathroom. That was all I could think of. I started towards the grand atrium when movement flashed in the corner of my eye. I saw them pouring out from campus, illuminated in brilliant orange from the torches in their hands. Leos. I recognized several faces from my classes. They moved as one, a large group heading across campus toward the clearing in the Whispering Grove. They wore pajamas, normal clothes, like they were going to hang out. But something in the air, prickling my skin, told me otherwise. I ducked, mapping a way to get into the grand atrium without being caught. If I could get to the door and make a clean break through the dining commons, I could dive into the upper sanctuary restroom next to the elevator. I dropped to my knees, attempting to crawl, when I saw her. The bright red hair was a giveaway, her bobbing ponytail frenzied as she joined the others. Lila. Another frantic look at my phone. 8,002 p.m. I didn't expect her to see me. She was looking around frantically, unlike the others whose eyes were set forward. It looked like she was searching for a way out, staggering over uneven ground. Then her eyes found mine. Initially, Lila looked relieved. Then her gaze went to the sky, flicking back to me. She strayed back, then stumbled over, pulling something from her jeans pocket. It was a much sharper knife, the blade glinting under the moonlight cast across the grounds. "Tell me your name," she said in a squeak. "I need to know it's you." I had half a mind to question her before I remembered the Gemini boy, Jasper, chained up. "Aurora," I gasped out. I'm Aurora." Lila hesitated. She twisted around, scanning the night, then turned back to me. Her frenzied eyes searched mine. "What is my most embarrassing story?" "What?" In 2 strides, she held the knife to my throat, her hand trembling. The steel was cold, and I had no doubt she wouldn't hesitate to press deeper. "Say it, Aurora." Word for word. Behind her, the main group of Leos was gone, with only some stragglers left. I nodded slowly, trying to ignore the blade digging into my skin. This was my new normal. You had your period in your boyfriend's parents' new car," I whispered. "You still have nightmares about it." Her expression crumpled with relief, and she dropped the knife. "How about mine?" I urged her. Lila surprised me with a quiet laugh. "You barfed tacos all over your crush on your first date," she choked out, "and he never talked to you again." I started to speak, but Lila tugged off her jacket, wrapping it around my eyes. At first, I fought back, but then her hands, her fingernails, dug into the bare flesh of my arms. Her touch was reassuring as she dragged her hands up my arms and grasped my shoulders. "I told you not to look up," her voice came out in an annoyed hiss. I didn't. I bit back a cry when she dug her nails in further. "What's happening? I'll explain later." "How can you guys tell who is a Gemini?" I whispered. "I don't get it." Lila didn't respond for a moment. "Your eyes," she whimpered. "It's in your eyes," she whimpered. "It's in your eyes." "What do you mean by that?" "Just stay quiet, okay?" Lila pulled me to my feet, and I staggered blindly, trying to balance myself. "I'll take you to the bathroom," she breathed, shoving me forward. "But if you tell anyone I helped you, I won't." I tripped over something, almost falling. The further we went, the more I could sense something, light. It started as a pinprick behind my eyes, then spread, light bleeding through the material of Lila's jacket. There was one bright spot of light, then another, and another, and another. Speckled illuminations like glitter illuminating the night. "Closer," they told me. I followed them almost giddily, watching them burn through Lila's jacket. When the sound of thundering footsteps sliced through me, I turned my head, trying to sense where it was coming from. "What's that?" I didn't realize I was laughing until manic giggles spurted from my lips. It was like being high, my thoughts bleeding into cotton candy. Suddenly, all I wanted was to see the lights. They felt so far away, and yet also like I could reach them, plucking them straight out of the sky. I laughed again, my body a puppet as I reached out and tried to catch them in my palm. "I said be quiet," Lila whisper shrieked. "I am. I was curious about the light. It was so bright, and I was missing out on fully taking it in." I stumbled again, my footsteps tangled. I didn't hear the voice until it was in my head, a whisper telling me to pull away the blindfold. It was choking me, suffocating my thoughts, and filling me with a taste of her. I saw it, just a glimpse dancing across my peripheral vision. I had my fingers clawing into Lila's jacket, ready to rip it off, when someone else did it for me. "Leo, what are you doing out here?" The voice was familiar, but it was being drowned out. By its light, its song. "I'm locking her up," Lila said shakily. Darkness made way for light, and I blinked rapidly. I could sense my head tipping back, and then Lila's fingers in my hair, trying to shove my head down. Blinking rapidly, I saw Principal Thorn and my best friend's pale face. And then I saw the stampede suffocated in shadow. Silhouettes passing me, ethereal light illuminating otherwise vacant eyes. The lights resembled stars themselves, dancing through the night. It was the same light that was seeping into me. It felt cozy and warm, already ignited inside them. I could tell who they were from their attempts to lock themselves up. I glimpsed handcuffs around wrists, makeshift ropes still clinging to arms and ankles, duct tape over mouths. When my gaze followed the horde, I caught sight of a cuffed ankle, a stray chain trailing behind him. Jasper, the boy who had locked me out. He moved slowly, like a zombie. His glasses were awkwardly placed on the top of his head, eyes drowned by that light. I caught a slight wrinkle in his brow. When the others marched forward, he stumbled back for a moment. Was he pretending to be part of the horde? He was a good actor, perfectly mimicking the others. His head was tipped back, arms by his sides, eyes forward, unblinking. His gaze flickered to me, lips mouthing 5 single words. "Morse, do not fucking look up." But I couldn't not fucking look up. The light was teasing me, seeping into me like honey. It wasn't moonlight. I could glimpse the crescent glowing under the clouds. Geminis. They were bathed in it, a swimming glow I wanted to dive into. All of them. Where were they going? Unlike the Leos, their expressions were blank as they staggered along, akin to a crowd of zombies. I remembered not being able to concentrate on the Geminis. Something was holding on to me, winding its way into my brain. I felt it reach directly into the back of my head, phantom fingers taking me into its grasp. I didn't mean to look up. I tipped my head back, drinking in the sky above me and the night that suddenly felt alive. In the corner of my eye, Jasper was grabbing his friends, pulling them into the trees. The Gemini horde stopped suddenly, heads tipping back, glowing eyes following suit. I blinked twice. Lila was already covering my eyes, and I wrenched her hands away so I could see clearly. I could feel it, sense it, consuming me, filling my thoughts with a lulling fog. Aurora! Lila's eyes found mine, and she dropped to her knees, like she was scared of me. I remembered her lips had formed the words in breathy sobs. Don't look. Before she could reach up, I blinked again, and this time it was a longer one. I started toward something. It was there. I just had to reach as high as I could. Then I would be able to touch it. Starry eyes surrounded me, but I don't remember being scared. Lila's cry rattled in my skull as I felt my body lurch on its own, driven by something else, a sentient thing inside me. I could feel my mind filling with fog. It told me to go to sleep, and I did. When I came to, it was no longer night. Artificial white light buzzed above me. The first thing I felt was something wet oozing down my chin. Then, cool porcelain pressed against my cheek. I was in an upper sanctuary restroom stall, my head stuck down a toilet bowl. But it was different from waking up hungover. I felt filthy. My body was aching, a striking pain rippling across the back of my head. When I lifted my neck slightly, a snapping sound made me jump, like my bones were popping back into place. My memory was gone, my thoughts a whirlwind lost to the dark. I could still see Lila's face illuminated in that startling light. The shadowy horde around me, starry eyes burning into me. Then there was nothing. The familiar ice-cold grays of porcelain greeted me when I pried my eyes open. There was something in my mouth, and I spat it out, expecting stale vomit. What I wasn't expecting was a wet piece of flesh to splash down into the bowl. It took me several seconds to realize the toilet bowl I had my head down was not empty. In the flickering light from the broken fixture above me, I saw the glistening red first, spattered on the lid, and when I looked down, on the floor too, staining my knees. And then I saw all of it, the bulging, slimy red mess sticking from the bowl. I lurched back, and something was stuck at the back of my throat. I reached into my mouth, cringing, and pulled out what looked like a mauled finger, skinned of flesh. There were only spiky pieces of bone fragments clinging to shredded muscle. Something inhuman croaked from my lips, and I slammed my hands over my mouth, my gut twisting. I looked up, red. I looked down, more red, vivid, wet, and recent. I was covered in dirt and grass stains, my legs bloodied and bruised, half of my hair ripped out. The walls around me were the same shade, glistening, pooling, disgusting red, dripping and staining every surface. The lumpy red mass sticking from the toilet bowl suddenly looked less like a mass the more I was looking at it, blinking through the blinding light. At some point, I screamed, heaving up the rest, wet globules of fat spilling from my mouth. There was a head in the toilet bowl, stuck right under, like I'd been trying to hide the evidence. The head didn't look like a head, half of its skull crushed. But I could still make out familiar features. Eyes still wide open, lips frozen in what looked like a scream. Lila. Oh God, fuck, I killed my best friend. I'm still sitting here. I can't bring myself to move. Normal academy life still goes on outside, and I can't understand how. I found myself back at the Forsaken Hall a few hours ago. It was locked, but there was a small key wrapped in some paper. I was forced to give you this, Vance. Don't touch my stuff. You're sharing with Elena. Don't think this means any of us trust you. Welcome to the madhouse. Coming in? The voice startled me. I twisted around, and there he was, Jasper, the asshole Gemini. I took pleasure in walking away, dumping both the key and the note in the trash. I asked this as a Gemini, preferably on campus, but this goes for all of you. Did any of you kill and eat someone last night with no memory of doing so? I'm starting to think the Gemini constellation is something more than a group of stars after all. I think it's alive. Leo, my older brother Daniel, Chloe, and Ethan. We were inseparable. Our afternoons after school were always spent in the vacant lot at the end of Elm Street, being our gloriously goofy selves. Others might have mocked our love for Comic-Cons and cosplay, labeling us losers and weirdos. But among us, those opinions dissolved. If being cool meant adopting the bland, judgmental demeanor of our schoolmates, then we embraced our eccentricity. In a world that often felt cold and indifferent, discovering friends who cherished you for who you truly were was a profound comfort. The city had recently imposed a curfew. Too many children had vanished, their faces plastered on missing person flyers taped to every lamppost. Yet, as long as we remained visible in the lot, within easy sight of our parents' windows, no one ever raised an alarm. And she was always there. The woman who lived in the old house at the end of Cherry Lane. She never emerged, at least not during the daylight hours I saw. Her residence was a known blight on the street, appearing more like a hoarder's den. Through the grime-streaked panes of her living room window, one could discern mountains of junk, piled high like a precarious, leaning rampart. Most days, she simply watched, a silent sentinel concealed behind those dusty lace curtains. Initially, you wouldn't notice her, not until your eyes adjusted to the dim light and the narrow gap in the fabric revealed the pale sliver of her face. She's probably just lonely, Chloe had mused once. She's a witch, Daniel retorted. I swear I heard her yelling at her refrigerator. We would laugh, but whenever I turned to take a shot and found her fixed gaze upon us, a knot of unease tightened in my stomach. Everything changed one Thursday. I arrived home late, just minutes before the curfew began. Great. I hoped there wasn't a patrol car nearby. Rounding the corner to our house, I froze. Flashing lights painted the walls in pulsating reds and blues. 2 patrol cars. A low groan escaped me. I tried to conjure an excuse should they question me, but the officers were preoccupied, focusing their attention on the open trunk of an unmarked vehicle. And then I saw her. The woman from the old house on Cherry Lane, her wrists bound in handcuffs, being guided into the back of a cruiser. She sat perfectly still, her eyes, devoid of tears or any trace of remorse for whatever offense had led to this, held no emotion. She wasn't watching the officers, nor was she looking at the ground. She stared straight ahead. Until her gaze landed on me, her head shifted slowly, our eyes locked. Her face remained utterly impassive. No fear, no confusion, no shame. Just that flat, glassy stare that made me feel as though she was painstakingly imprinting my features onto her memory. My breath caught, as if her glare had physically pinned me to the spot. Her eyes widened imperceptibly, but never deviated even as the patrol car began to roll forward. I backed away, forcing my legs to move, and hurried home. The cruiser pulled away moments later, and she vanished behind the swirling lights. I closed the door behind me and screamed when a shadow loomed. It was Daniel, pointing at the clock. Dude, where have you been? You almost missed curfew, he scolded. Sorry, it's just the weird lady. I saw her getting arrested, I stammered. Daniel eyed me, then moved to the door, locking it securely. The next day, her stare was still burned behind my eyes. I listened from the hallway as Daniel watched the local news. A neighbor, a Ms. Miller, was being interviewed. She recounted seeing the woman drop something on the sidewalk while juggling her groceries, something tiny. A small boot, blue, with a little space shuttle on the side. It belonged to one of the missing children from the next street over. The police had searched her house after that. The reporter's tone, despite her professional composure, betrayed a deep disgust. They found remains, bone fragments, something wrapped and stored like food, a jar filled with human teeth, and according to the detective, index cards with children's names and dates written on them, the reporter concluded. Ethan barely spoke after hearing the news. We still played ball often, but only when adults stayed close by. Whenever the curtains in the old house at the end of Cherry Lane stirred from a passing breeze, every one of us froze. The house has stood vacant ever since. Or at least, that is what everyone keeps saying. But sometimes, when I walk my dog before twilight, I catch myself glancing up at that window. It's just a habit by now, something my nerves do before my brain decides anything. And sometimes, only for a fleeting moment, I'm convinced I see a shadow shift behind the curtain. For that instant, I feel her eyes on me again. studying my every move. I even called the county sheriff's office last month, begging them never to let her move back. I told them about the night she was arrested, how her head turned toward me as if it was a silent promise that I might be next on her list. The profound loneliness of December 31st settled deep within Leo. He was 32, a tech support specialist for a data analytics firm that he suspected would replace him with AI by the spring. He'd been single for so long that his relatives had stopped asking about girlfriends and now inquired solely about his general health. That evening, Leo sat slumped on the couch in his small city apartment, the distant pops of premature fireworks punctuating the silence. The television blared a New Year's Eve special, a sickeningly saccharine spectacle of forced optimism where perspiring singers promised a magically different year. He loathed it. He despised their contrived hope. His laptop rested on his lap, a portal to aimless internet browsing. Then it appeared. Not an intrusive ad, but a simple link on an obscure productivity forum he frequented. A cruel irony, given his pervasive procrastination. The link bore a stark declaration, "Anekdici ari wori me festo." Become who you were born to be. He clicked. The site was minimalist, almost brutally stark. Black background, white sans, serif font. No ads, no stock photos of blissful individuals stretching into yoga poses. No empty promises of quick wealth. There was only a text field, numbered 1 to 5, and a prominent button labeled Sing in Contract. At the very top, a phrase echoed, "Change hurts. Permanence kills." What are you willing to sacrifice for the new you? Chloe, Leo, sufficiently drunk and desperate, found it profoundly poetic. He glanced at his belly, a soft bulge over his belt. He noted his fingernails, bitten raw to the quick, a nervous habit that had plagued him since childhood. He recalled Marina, his ex, telling him he was too emotionally closed off, just before the final, definitive slam of her door. This year, he vowed, would be different. Truly different. He would change. His fingers hovered over the keyboard, then began to type. His sincere, simple wishes for the coming year flowed onto the screen. 1. I want to stop biting my nails for good. CA classic resolution. 2. I want a smile that compels people to notice me. His teeth were yellowed, and he rarely smiled with an open mouth, so a radiant smile felt crucial for his self-esteem. 3. CA I want to lose 15 kilograms and fast. CAA he had no patience for gym routines. 4. To the A's, I want to have an open heart to the world. His ex's criticism still stung his ego. 5. I want to kill the old failed Leo forever. He reread the list. It looked less like resolutions and more like a battle plan. He clicked Signin, contract. The screen flickered once. There was no request for an email, no credit card details, no confirmation pop-up, just a single message that flashed for 2 seconds before the site went offline, returning a 404 error. The protocol has been initiated. Happy New Year. Leo closed his laptop, chuckled at his own gullibility, finished the last of the sparkling wine, and passed out on the couch moments before the countdown chimed through the apartment. See January 1st. Leo awoke with a parched mouth and a skull-splitting headache. The midday sun, a harsh intruder, pierced through the gaps in the blinds, assaulting his eyes. He rose, unsteady, and stumbled into the kitchen for water. As his hand closed around the glass, he felt something profoundly wrong. The texture of the glass felt strangely alien against his fingertips. He looked at his hand. A scream tore from his throat, and the glass slipped, shattering on the linoleum, scattering water and razor-sharp fragments. His nails, they were gone. Not merely cut short, but utterly absent. Where the hard keratin plate should have been, there was only skin. Smooth, continuous, pink skin that enveloped the tips of his fingers, as if he were a plastic doll or an unborn child yet to develop them. Horrified, he brought his hand to his mouth. The sensation of his tongue gliding over the blind. Fingertips was nauseating. There were no edges. Nothing to bite. He ran to the bathroom. His feet. The same thing. His toes were unsettlingly smooth, like sausages. What in the world is this? He croaked at his reflection. His heart hammered. He tried to rationalize. An allergic reaction? A bizarre side effect of some sudden vitamin deficiency? Fungus? But there was no pain, no blood. The skin was perfectly healed, as if he had always been this way. The list. He remembered the list. Item 1. I want to stop biting my nails for good. C. Well, technically, it was now impossible to bite what no longer existed. He grabbed his phone to dial emergency services. But he paused. What would he say? Hello, my nails have disappeared. They would either mock him or commit him. He decided to wait. Perhaps it was a vivid, alcohol-induced lucid dream. He spent the rest of the day wearing gloves, deliberately avoiding his hands. The tactile sensation of picking up objects without the rigid support of nails was agonizing. Too soft, too vulnerable. See January 2nd. Leo woke with a peculiar lightness. Not a lightness of spirit, but of physical mass. He pushed himself up in bed, and as he swung his feet to the floor to stand, he lost his balance, pitching shoulder first onto the carpet. His left leg wouldn't respond. He looked down, expecting to see his tangled pajamas. The pajamas were there, but empty from the knee down. The panic was so absolute that his vision tunneled. He groped at his leg. His left thigh was present. His knee was there. But just below the patella, the leg simply ended. There was no blood, no gaping wound. The skin closed into a perfect, rounded, smooth stump, like the end of a sausage cut and perfectly healed years ago. No, 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 he whimpered, dragging himself backward until his back hit the wall. He pulled up the pant leg of his right leg. A substantial chunk of his calf was missing, as if someone had used a giant ice cream scoop, excavating the flesh and leaving only the tibia and fibula bones thinly sheathed in translucent skin. He touched his torso. A section of his back was gone. He could feel the cavernous void. Flesh was missing from his right arm. Crying hysterically, he crawled to the bathroom and, supporting himself on the sink, stepped onto the scale. The digital display blinked. 0.5 kgs. HE's take 0.5 kgs. Just 2 days prior, he had weighed 85.5 kgs. He had lost precisely 15 kilograms. Item 3. I want to lose 15 kilos fast. He vomited into the sink. This wasn't a diet. He was being sculpted. Someone, or something, was meticulously removing pieces of him to fulfill his wishes. Flesh, fat, bone, muscle, magically subtracted during sleep, cauterized by an invisible force. He tried to call the police. He dialed the emergency number. The call wouldn't connect. A synthetic voice spoke in his ear. The contract cannot be interrupted during the processing phase. Please wait for completion. He hurled the phone against the mirror, cracking the glass. He was trapped. Trapped in his apartment. Trapped within his diminishing body. He spent the day on the living room floor, a kitchen knife clutched in his hand, waiting for an intruder. No one entered. The horror was emanating from within. To January 3rd. He didn't sleep. He stayed awake, watching his own body, waiting for another piece to vanish. But exhaustion finally claimed him around 4,000 a.m. When he awoke at 9,000 a.m., his mouth throbbed. A sharp, searing pain in his cheeks and jaw. He tasted copper. He limped on his single leg to the cracked bathroom mirror. He screamed, but the sound was a gurgled, strangled noise. His cheeks, had they been torn? No. They had been remodeled. The skin at the corners of his mouth had been pulled back and fused near his ears. His lips were stretched in unbearable tension, exposing all his gums. He was smiling. A wide, fixed, maniacal smile, reminiscent of a twisted clown, but without the crude scars. It was anatomically impossible, yet it was there. And his teeth. His yellowed, crooked teeth had fallen out. He spotted some in the sink drain. In their place, new teeth were growing. White as sanitary porcelain. And large. They were perfect, yes, but far too big for his mouth. They were predator teeth, designed to be seen from afar. They gleamed under the bathroom light. Item 2. I want a smile that forces people to look at me. He tried to close his mouth. He couldn't. His lips were now too short. His teeth would remain perpetually exposed. The air dried his gums, causing excruciating pain. He looked like a creature from a horror film. A one-legged, perpetually grinning demon. Tears streamed down his face in front of the mirror, but the smile never faltered. He was sobbing, his eyes swollen with dread, yet his mouth remained fixed in that grotesque rictus of eternal, white happiness. The dissonance between his inner torment and his outward expression was maddening. He began frantically searching his browser history. He had to find the site, he had to cancel. But the history was meticulously clean. He attempted to text his sister, pleading for help. When he typed, "Help, I need help," the letters on the screen spontaneously changed to, "I'm great. The process is wonderful." The contract controlled his outgoing data. It wouldn't allow him to spoil the surprise. He was isolated. A prisoner in a rapidly disintegrating tower of flesh. January 4th. A sharp pain in his chest, not heartburn, not a heart attack, but a cold, precise cutting sensation, roused him before sunrise. He looked down. His shirt was open. The buttons had popped off. In the center of his chest, over his sternum, the skin was becoming transparent. No, not transparent. It was opening. Like the petals of a grotesque flower, the skin and pectoral muscle were slowly retracting to the sides, curling in on themselves. He wasn't bleeding. The edges of the wound were clean, shiny, and moist. The sternum bone cracked and split in half. The ribs pulled apart with a wet cracking sound, like green branches being forcibly bent. He screamed, writhing in bed, clutching the sheets with his nailless hands. The fixed smile on his face seemed to mock his agony. He could see his lungs inflating and deflating. They were pink and gray, and in the middle of them, beating frantically, was his heart. The tissue surrounding the heart began to dissolve. The organ was exposed, naked, vulnerable to the apartment's air. He could see the arteries, the blue veins, the yellow fat. He could see every terrified beat. See its item 4. I want to have an open heart to the world. The literal interpretation was a masterpiece of artistic cruelty. He felt the cold air touch the surface of his heart. Every beat was a fresh agony, scraping against the open edges of his ribcage. Any dust, any bacteria, any casual touch would be fatal. He was a living anatomical display. He dragged himself to the cleanest corner of the room. He grabbed rolls of plastic wrap, normally used for leftovers, and wrapped his own torso, sobbing as the plastic adhered to the exposed flesh and bone. He had to protect himself. He was far too open. He sat in the dark, listening to the wet thud of his heart beating against the plastic. There was one item left. The list had 5 items. He looked at the clock. It was 11:50 p.m. Day 5 was approaching. Item 5. I want to kill the old, failed Leo forever. The dread he had experienced in the preceding days was nothing compared to the glacial terror that flooded his veins in that moment. The other items were modifications. Tortures, yes, but modifications. The 5th item was a death sentence. Kill the old Leo. He grabbed the kitchen knife he kept by his side. If anyone came to kill him, he would take them with him. He dragged himself to the front door, the apartment's only entry point. He remained there, with his giant smile, his heart exposed beneath the plastic, his missing leg, his smooth hands clutching the knife handle. He waited. Midnight. Nothing happened. 1000 a.m. Still nothing happened. 1000 a.m. 3000 a.m. He eventually succumbed to exhaustion, falling asleep, leaning against the door, praying the nightmare was over, that the literal interpretation had been metaphorical. This time. Saw January 5th. Leo woke to the unmistakable sound of a key turning in the lock. The sound emanated from behind his head. He was leaning against the door. The key was being inserted from the outside. His blood ran cold. He lived alone. only he possessed a key. The spare was with his mother, who lived in another city. He recoiled, dragging his mutilated body across the floor, pointing the knife. The doorknob turned. The door opened softly. The hallway light spilled in, outlining a silhouette. A man entered. He wore an impeccable, tailored gray suit. Italian leather shoes gleamed. He closed the door gently behind him and turned to face Leo. The knife slipped from Leo's smooth hand, clattering metallically to the floor. The man was Leo, but not him. He possessed Leo's face, but refined. His skin glowed with health, a natural tan. He was lean, exactly 15 kilograms lighter than Leo's former self, but proportionally, athletically built. He smiled. The smile was wide, confident, with perfect white teeth that actually fit within his mouth, a magnetic smile. He glanced at Leo's hands on the floor. His hands had perfect, well-groomed nails. He placed a hand on his chest. Leo knew, instinctively, that his heart was protected by strong bones, but that he was emotionally charismatic, open, in a metaphorical sense. He was the new Leo, version 2.0, the finished product. And Leo? He looked down at his own shredded body on the floor. He wasn't the client. He was the raw material. He was the chrysalis. He was the chrysalis. He was the bio-waste left behind after the butterfly had emerged. The old, failed Leo. The new Leo walked toward him. He didn't appear disgusted. He had a look of pity, like someone regarding a fatally wounded animal that needed to be put out of its misery. "You were very brave," he said. His voice was Leo's, but without the stutter, without the insecurity projected and firm. "Thank you for the sacrifice. I'll take it from here." "Who are you?" Leo gurgled through his stretched smile. "I am what you asked for. I am the resolution." He crouched down. He crouched down. From his suit pocket, he produced not a weapon, but a thick, industrial black trash bag, and a roll of duct tape. The contract was clear, Leo. For the new to be born, the old must die. Coexistence is not an option. It's a server space conflict in reality. He lunged. Leo tried to fight. He tried to scratch with his nailless fingers, tried to bite with his oversized teeth. But he was weak, mutilated, his heart exposed. The new Leo was strong. He pinned Leo easily. Leo felt his hands, his own hands, but strong close around his neck. It wasn't a strangulation born of anger. It was a shutdown. As his vision faded, the last thing Leo saw was his own face, perfect and beautiful, smiling at him as he was extinguished. Leo woke up. The alarm clock shrilled. 7:30 a.m. He sat up in bed. He took a deep breath. His lungs filled with air without pain. His chest was closed. His legs were both there. He ran to the mirror. He was lean. 70 kilograms, defined muscles. He opened his mouth. Perfect, white, aligned teeth. He looked at his hands. Impeccable nails. He felt an inner peace, a confidence he had never known, an open heart. He had done it. It worked. He was the Leo he had always dreamed of being. He donned his new suit. He had a job interview today, and he knew he would get it. He had a date with Marina later. He'd called her, and his voice was so charming, she'd readily agreed to see him. He walked to the kitchen to make coffee. He opened the cabinet under the sink to retrieve a new filter. Deep in the back, behind the cleaning products, was a black trash bag, large and heavy, meticulously wrapped in duct tape. It smelled like meat beginning to turn. He paused for a second. He looked at the bag. He felt a pang of memory, an echo of pain in his chest, a ghostly sensation of a torn smile. No, it must be his imagination. The old Leo was full of paranoia. He wasn't like that anymore. He closed the cabinet door. He grabbed his coffee, flashed his best smile at the hallway mirror, and stepped out to conquer his new year. After all, today was trash pickup day. He'd take the bag when he went down. The clinking of glasses, the roar of laughter, and the steady thrum of celebration filled the Emerald Crown. Eleanor leaned against the sticky bar, a half-finished cider in her hand, as jokes spilled around her like the cheap fizz of New Year's Eve champagne. Above the mirrored shelves, several screens glowed, all tuned to the scene in Unity Plaza, where a colossal crystal orb hovered, poised for its annual descent, a glittering promise of a fresh start. Eleanor remembered thinking how deeply comforting these traditions were, how humanity clung to them like ancient wards against the encroaching darkness of the unknown. But a persistent ringing had begun in her head, refusing to be ignored. She first dismissed it as the evening's libations or the sheer volume of the crowd, a simple case of tinnitus. Yet, it grew a thin needle-thread whine that deepened, layering into a complex, impossible harmony. It was like ancient bells being rung miles beneath a forgotten sea by something that had never known the warmth of a prayer. Her friends, oblivious, only laughed harder, their mirth doing little to ease Eleanor's unsettling gaze. But then, others in the pub began to pause mid-cheer. A woman near the window dropped her glass, its shards scattered silently on the floor. No one laughed now. "10. Stay." The roar from the screen echoed, the crowd in Unity Plaza counting down. The ringing inside Eleanor's head bent, twisting in on itself. The lights in the Emerald Crown dimmed, not a flicker, but a profound bowing, their colors draining as if ashamed to exist. Shadows stretched unnaturally, crawling across the floor where no light should have allowed them purchase. The televisions above the bar began to hum in a chilling unison, their images of Unity Plaza warping into spiraling geometries that made Eleanor's eyes ache with the effort to comprehend. TEF 5. It was then that Eleanor felt it, not the cold grip of fear, but a profound, almost sorrowful recognition, as though something vast and inevitable had finally found the correct hour to arrive. 1. 3. The ringing coalesced, becoming a voice. Not spoken words, but a deep, primal truth that was simply understood. It held no malice for them, it offered no love, it simply remembered, a time before humanity was permitted to pretend the world belonged to them. 1. The crystal orb in Unity Plaza fell and shattered not into confetti, but into impossible, fracturing shapes that unfolded beyond the screens, blooming into the very room, into the midnight sky outside, into everything. The city outside screamed as the heavens above split open like ancient parchment. Stars rearranged themselves into bewildering sigils. The great oceans reversed their tides with a deafening roar. History, as they knew it, exhaled its last, shuddering breath. Eleanor and everyone else knelt, not by command, but by an overwhelming primal compulsion, before a presence vast beyond any human concept of mercy or malice. A god not of endings, but of profound, total revisions. The ringing ceased, and in the absolute quiet that followed, the old world, its pubs, its bustling plazas, its fragile calendars, was gently, irrevocably painted over with something terrifyingly new. A new world was set upon them. But this world would not be governed by man. It would be governed by something far greater than any human mind could ever hope to comprehend. Ethan spat, the pinkish toothpaste suds, usually a vibrant sky blue, trickling sluggishly towards the sink's drain. His gums, still throbbing with a dull ache, felt raw against his tongue. A trip to the dentist was a luxury they couldn't afford. Certainly not for him. Below, in the small living room, the drone of the news was a constant backdrop, the same grim stories repeating endlessly. Ethan flicked a scattering of crumbs and empty snack wrappers off the worn armchair and slumped into it. Frank, his father, belly straining against his shirt, eyes glued to the flickering screen, breathed with a hoarse, ragged sound. "Get me a damn beer, you worthless kid." A crunched-up can bounced off Ethan's head. A wave of familiar rage briefly surged through him before quickly dissipating, leaving a hollow exhaustion. He leaned forwards, picking up the can and noting the sticky slug of spilled beer seeping into the faded carpet. "Sure," he acquiesced, his voice flat. In the cramped kitchen, Carol, his mother, didn't acknowledge him as he made a beeline for the fridge. She stood at the counter, her hands wavering between a range of cold cuts and her phone, its screen smeared with greasy traces of processed meat. Can you leave that out when you're done? Ethan asked, cracking open the beer. Won't be enough, she replied without looking up. Ethan stared at the counter. 4 packets of various meats, some slices of cheese. He felt the brief swell of anger again, before it too dissolved. What was happening today? See, that better be for your father, she warned, as he wandered away with the bottle. He just shook his head. Whatever. Frank snatched the beer from his hand, his gaze still fixed intently on the television. Briefly, he shot Ethan a glare, but it wasn't the usual venomous stare. There was little malice in it, only an unsettling worry, almost an imploring look. He grunted, telling Ethan to sit. Watching his father, fidgeting restlessly in his chair, Ethan felt that ingrained sense of alienation and disgust. Then Carol brought a heavily laden plate of sandwiches through. Bored, Ethan checked his phone. The usual group chats pinged away. General chatter, nothing specific, nothing's for him, a piece of trash. Nobody for him, a piece of trash, nobody. The world could be ending, and no one would spare a second thought for him. Sarah, his father suddenly shrieked. Come see this. On the TV screen, the banner scrolling along the bottom had changed from a warning yellow to an urgent, flashing red. You idiot, Frank barked, his voice cracking. Lock the bloody doors. Windows too, Frank. Yes, moron. Just do it, Ethan. Whatever you say, Ethan drawled. His phone buzzed as Ethan drawled. His phone buzzed as he got up. He heard his mother's go off in the kitchen simultaneously. He read the message as he went about securing every door and window. Emergency. Alert, it began. A viral infection is spreading rapidly through your community. Please remain indoors and lock down immediately, it continued. If you are experiencing any of the following symptoms, please reply to this message with your full address. S fastening the last lock. S fastening the last lock. Estes reread the text again. It wasn't an exhaustive list of symptoms, but one in particular stood out. Automatically, he rubbed his tongue across his gums. They tasted metallic, like iron, like blood. A slow, deliberate smile spread across Ethan's face. He dropped every window and door key he'd collected into the kitchen bin. She had everything. Grace, intelligence, and an effortless charm that drew people to her like a moth to a flame. She was the quintessential admired student, and everyone seemed to orbit her radiant presence. I, on the other hand, was merely a shadow, easily overlooked, a quiet observer destined for the margins, left to be battered and bruised by. Sarah? Is that you? A voice, bright and melodic, cut through my reverie, startling me. I jolted, my gaze lifting to find her standing there, a gentle smile gracing her lips as she settled into the chair opposite me at the small coffee shop table. Hello, Chloe, I murmured, my eyes instinctively dropping from hers. I didn't anticipate seeing you here, she observed, and I could only manage a slight nod in response, a familiar knot of discomfort tightening in my chest just from sharing her space. Why are you even bothering with me? I blurted, the words escaping before I could filter them. Shouldn't you be meeting up with your usual crowd? Actually, I wasn't planning on it, she replied, her tone still light. Sometimes it's nice to just have a moment to myself, you know? Then she tilted her head slightly. But truly, I've always wanted to tell you, I admire the sweaters you wear around the university. Her unexpected compliment made me look up, a flicker of surprise in my eyes. You do? I asked, and she confirmed with a gentle nod. Absolutely. They always look so cozy and stylish on you. She beamed, and I found myself tugging self-consciously at the sleeve of my own garment, a blush creeping onto my cheeks. Thanks, I mumbled, a half-truth. They're just comfortable. Are you all right, Sarah? You seem a little preoccupied, Chloe asked, her voice tinged with concern. I hesitated for a beat, then let out a slow, heavy sigh. It's just, you seem to have such an effortless existence, I began, the words tasting bitter on my tongue. Everyone looks up to you, your family is clearly well off. Your life just appears so perfect, and I can't help but envy how easily everything comes to you. My stomach churned with each syllable. Chloe grew quiet, her expression unreadable, calm and almost distant. Well, It wasn't always like this, she said, her gaze drifting past me, out the window. Before moving to the city, life was far from easy. There was a period when I seriously considered ending things. A long, heavy silence settled between us, and a cold dread coiled in my gut as the true implication of her words sank in. But what happened next? I whispered, my voice barely audible. My father passed away, you see. He was discovered in such a horrific state, utterly disfigured, and the investigation eventually went cold. But I'm so relieved they never connected it to me, she finished, a faint smile playing on her lips. The last sentence hung in the air, a puzzle piece that didn't quite fit until it suddenly clicked into place, sending a jolt of ice through my veins. My heart hammered against my ribs. You actually did it? My voice was a choked gasp, laced with disbelief and horror. She simply nodded, the serene smile unwavering. That was her chilling confirmation. Yet, the only words I could force out were, "How did you manage it?" She reached into her bag, her movements calm and deliberate, then produced a small, crudely fashioned cloth effigy. "You just attach a piece of his hair to it, then toss it into a laundry machine and let it run," she explained, her smile softening, almost sweet. Mother brought the SUV to a halt in the desolate warehouse district. David frowned, looking out at the graffiti-scarred buildings. "Mother, what are we doing here? I thought we were going to the arcade." His mother's gaze was evasive, darting around the empty alleyway as she nervously picked at the scabs on her arm. Her usual paranoia didn't alarm him as much as it perhaps should have. It was just Mom being Mom. She turned back to David, her eyes welling up. "David, do you remember your brother?" "Of course," he replied, confused. "Why wouldn't I? And you remember when Alex disappeared, don't you? All the police. The endless questions to your father and me." "Yes, vividly. Why? Has something happened? Do the police have a new lead?" "Actually, about that," she hesitated, the difficulty of her confession evident in her face. "Alex didn't exactly go missing. I know where he went." David's jaw dropped. Alex's disappearance had shattered their family life. A glimmer of hope sparked within him. "That's wonderful news. So, when is he coming home?" His mother met his gaze directly, tears streaming down her face. "Sweetheart, Alex is never coming home, and neither are you." A dark, unmarked van screeched to a stop beside their SUV. Two masked figures emerged swiftly. When one of them handed his mother a thick wad of cash, David's world tilted. In that horrifying moment, the truth slammed into him. His brother would never be seen again, just like him.